A.J. Brown to the Patriots, we examine the latest rumor. Plus, could Ashton Jeanty be selected at 4th overall? All of that here on Pat's Cast.
This is the call. One pick could shift it all. Defense wins, yeah we know.
Welcome to Pat's Cast. I'm Brad Whitaker. Good to be with you. It's rumor season, it's lying season, it's smokescreen season, and we have the latest report coming from Fitzy of WEEI, of all people, about a potential blockbuster draft day trade involving the New England Patriots and the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Fitzy, I don't even know his full name. I think it's Paul Fitzgerald. He's always gone by Fitzy, you know, kind of a regular personality in the Boston sports media landscape. Don't really know his sources or if he has reliable sources, but according to Fitzy, and he called into EEI on Friday afternoon, the Philadelphia Eagles are willing to make a trade with the New England Patriots involving A.J. Brown and additional compensation if, and only if, Abdul Carter is still available at 4th overall. Now, straight up, that would not be a good deal, right? Like, you're getting one of the highest paid receivers in the NFL, an expensive player as great as A.J. Brown would be. You would be adding a blue chip prospect for cheap money, drafting Abdul Carter at 4th overall, and it would be awfully hard for the Patriots to turn that down. That being said, there clearly is an intention this offseason to make life as easy as possible for Drake May, because he has a lot ahead of him. He has to learn Josh McDaniels' new offense. He has to take complete control of that, which he really didn't have in that more center-dominated West Coast offense that Alex Van Pelt ran last year. Getting him an additional elite weapon to Stephon Diggs would be a real game changer. Now, that means you're passing on the blue chip pass rusher. You are not addressing left tackle, which is the biggest need at this point in time. You're probably not going to be able to address it, at the very least, until later in the first round, if you're willing to trade up after what you got back from the Eagles. So that's the thing. The Eagles would have to be willing to get a lot because they won the Super Bowl. They have the 32nd overall draft pick, which might as well be an early second rounder. You get the 5th-year option, which is good, assuming you draft a good player. So if they're going to move from 32 all the way up to 4, it's going to take a lot more than A.J. Brown. They're going to, of course, have to have the 32nd overall pick in there, which the Patriots would receive. I'm guessing the Patriots would get their 2nd-round pick in 2025 as well, which would be the last pick, of course, in the 2nd round. And then you'd probably need even more than that, right? You would need, ideally, a future 1st, and then throw in a future 3rd or a future 4th in 26 or 27. Like, you have to get a lot. And I also don't, there's a ton of dead cap if the Eagles do trade A.J. Brown. Now, this isn't an unheard of move for Howie Roseman and company down there in Philadelphia. They've always been proactive about their cap space, and that's how they've been able to essentially rebuild the Super Bowl winning team that they had back in 2018 and win it again a few years later with a completely different roster. Similar to what Bill Belichick used to do, they've been willing to move on from players that are either too expensive or might be hitting the twilight of their career and move on from them a year or two early. I think A.J. Brown has plenty of great years left, so I'm not sure that's quite the case, but he is very expensive, and they have a lot of other guys that they're going to need to pay. You know, they were willing to give up on Milton Williams, who went to the Patriots this year, because a lot of those Super Bowl players, they just couldn't afford to keep on the roster. Josh Sweat as well, and long-term, they're going to have even more issues with as much as they're going to be paying A.J. Brown, as much as they're going to have to pay Devontae Smith, Jalen Hurts and company. They've always prioritized their offensive line. That's how the Eagles have stayed competitive year after year after year, even if they're not one of the better teams in the league. They're always up there. They're a smart organization, and if they're willing to do this, if this rumor is true from Fitzy, I understand why, right? You have a chance. Again, they lost Milton Williams. They lost Josh Sweat. They could add Abdul Carter and be paying him for cheap for 4 years and reasonably cheap with the 5th-year option. The Eagles would, they already have a roster that is going to contend for the Super Bowl this year, so it's not that important that they lose future draft picks because they have a pretty good foundation set. So I understand why the Eagles would be willing to do it. The dead cap on A.J. Brown, if they've traded him, is the real issue, which is why I'm skeptical of this rumor. And then, of course, would the Patriots be willing to do this, right? I mean, if you add Abdul Carter, and let's say the Giants draft Shadur Sanders at 3rd overall and he's available, you have Abdul Carter, Keon White, Christian Barmore, and Milton Williams in your defensive front. That would be probably the best pass rush in the NFL. And as I've said many times, we know Drake May needs protection. We know Drake May needs weapons. But if the other team can't score, it doesn't matter as much, right? And that's how the Eagles won the Super Bowl this past year, is defense and a very solid running attack, which I'm going to get to in just a moment, talking about Ashton Jeanty. But think about the receiving room, though, in New England if they made this trade. A.J. Brown as your number 1 boundary X wide receiver, which they've been missing forever. Stephon Diggs as your number 2. Demario Douglas as your number 3. And then you probably have to move Kendrick Bourne. I would rather stick with Kayshon Boutte. I think we're underselling the development of Kayshon Boutte and the leap he made, even from college to year 1, but particularly from year 1 to year 2. He was Drake May's favorite weapon outside of Hunter Henry this last year. So I would put Boutte at 4, but they also added Mac Hollins. Mac Hollins is a really good player. And you got Jalen Polk and Javon Baker in their development. And I'm still going to do one more mock draft before we get to Thursday. And you'll see then, I don't think the Patriots are going to prioritize wide receiver as much as we think they are, because they have a very crowded receiving room at this moment in time. And I don't think the roster that you see right now is the roster that you're going to get in early September. They're going to have to move some of these guys. And if they draft, even if they take a player in the 3rd or 4th round, they're probably going to have to move someone or be willing to cut Javon Baker or trade Kendrick Bourne or do something like that. So I think the Patriots would listen to this if this rumor is true. And depending on the compensation, I think they would be willing to pull the trigger. And that's the thing. It does position them. Let's say they have the 32nd overall pick. They added A.J. Brown with this trade. They have the 32nd overall pick. They have the 38th overall pick early in the 2nd round. That's enough ammunition to package and move back up into the middle of the 1st round, I'm guessing. Probably somewhere between 15 and 25. So mid to late 1st round. And then you can take the best left tackle available. Now, you're not going to get Will Campbell. You're not going to get Armin Membu. But you could get Josh Simmons if he falls. He may not be able to start week 1, but you could get Josh Simmons potentially. Josh Connerly Jr. could be available there as well. Ariante Ursary, I think might be available at 38th overall. But, and of course, Kelvin Banks. I don't know if I just said Kelvin Banks, but he's the one who I think is a little underrated at this point, Kelvin Banks. No one's really talking about him that much because he had a couple of bad games late in the year in college football, but for the most part, very dominant left tackle. Certainly has the traits and the physicality and the arm length, which Will Campbell doesn't have. I don't know. I think that's what the Patriots would do in this scenario. Trade for A.J. Brown. Hopefully you get a future 1st and a future 3rd in that deal, and you also get the Eagles' 1st and 2nd round pick. So then you have essentially 3 2nd round picks if you count the Eagles' last pick in the 1st round. I mean, that's a ton of draft picks. The Patriots would definitely be very active on draft day, trading up and taking the best player available. So I think it gives the Patriots a lot of flexibility, a lot of ammunition if they make this type of move. We know how exciting it would be as a fan to see A.J. Brown and Stephon Diggs. I guess the only concern is how does that change the dynamics in the receiving room? You have 2 alphas in there. Stephon Diggs, who definitely fills the room with his personality. A.J. Brown, who, similar, right? Similar story. And then you have all these young guys on the roster, plus Mac Hollins, who's a veteran. You know, that could work very well, or it could be an absolute disaster. Now, what I will say is A.J. Brown wants to play for the Patriots, and we've known this for years to come. He grew up a Patriots fan. He posted a video about a month ago of Tom Brady sending him a jersey in the mail, and he had this ecstatic reaction to it. And then he posted a video either last night or this morning, same thing, but with Julian Edelman, Guy loves the Patriots. He wants to play for the Patriots. He played with Mike Vrabel, obviously in Tennessee. Those two have a very strong relationship. You know Vrabel wants to trade for him if the value is right. This is the way to do it, right? This is the way to do it. Otherwise, I'm not sure it's a possibility. Now, Eagles fans don't want this to happen, obviously, but Eagles fans have seen their organization make these moves and have it work out time after time, because you got to move on from the expensive players that chew up a lot of cap space, especially if you have very good players that you have to pay in the future and you want more flexibility there. But A.J. Brown on the Patriots with Stephon Diggs, and the Patriots have additional draft picks to trade up and get a guy like Kelvin Banks or Josh Connerly Jr. That's not a bad strategy relative to drafting at 4th overall and just taking Will Campbell or taking Abdul Carter or Jalen Walker. Again, going to be very hard for the Patriots to turn down Abdul Carter, but they've been prioritizing making life easier for Drake May, so much that they traded away Joe Milton for a 5th rounder, which I don't think most general managers would have done. I certainly would have been patient, understanding that Drake May might go down and that Joe Milton has the traits to be a starting quarterback in this league. I wouldn't have done that, but they really want to cater to Drake May, so they got rid of Milton, made his life a little bit more comfortable, brought in a veteran backup to help mentor with Josh Dobbs. This would be an additional move to that, and give the Patriots the ammunition to move back up, take one of the better tackles, and have future draft picks too. Maybe you want to trade for the Eagles' 2027 first-round pick, right? Because they're going to be up there in the postseason this year. Maybe you want to get a future pick 2 years down the road, and you could get even more additional compensation doing it that way, because it's less valuable because it's further down the road. I would love it. I would love it. It would be super exciting. We'll see what happens. Again, this came from Fitzy, so take it with a grain of salt. It's lying season. It's smokescreen season. But that would definitely change things up, change our expectations a little bit, not just for the draft, but for the Patriots. And as I've said time and time again on this podcast, Patriots have a very, very easy schedule next year, particularly at home. 6 or 7 games that I can chalk up right now as wins. They add A.J. Brown to that. The expectation shouldn't be the playoffs. The expectation should be win the division and maybe even make a run in the postseason if you got to add a guy like A.J. Brown. We'll see what happens. Again, this is the latest rumor, just broke a few minutes ago, and could not be true. It might not be true. We'll find out. But assuming that doesn't happen, right? And the draft is going to play out the way we think it is. Let me give you this scenario. 1st overall, Cam Ward goes to Tennessee. 2nd overall, Travis Hunter goes to the Cleveland Browns. And then the Giants, they're looking into Shedeur Sanders. They've really poked and prodded, and they're considering it, but they opt for the best player available and take Abdul Carter at 3rd overall with the plethora of pass rushers that they have on that roster. And that leaves the Patriots sitting there at number 4 with the 2 blue chip prospects off the board. And it's a big drop-off after that. And assessing the players between 4 and 15 on these draft boards, it's a crapshoot on who the best player available there is. But one thing that many are ruling out when we're talking about the blue chip player conversation, Travis Hunter 1A, Abdul Carter 1B, there is a 3rd player who is definitely the best at their position and can definitely be considered a blue chip player. The only reason he's not considered a blue chip player is because he's a running back. And that, of course, is Ashton Jeanty from Boise State University. Now, let me just state, it's not smart to draft a running back at 4th overall. It is not a good idea, and if the Patriots enter draft day on Thursday with the current roster they have right now, they should not draft Ashton Jeanty. It is a terrible idea. Running back is the most dependent position on the field. Address the other needs first, and then worry about running back later, because this is a very deep running back draft. That being said, I can be talked into the Patriots drafting Ashton Jeanty at 4th overall. We know a few things, right? Mike Vrabel had a very run-dependent offense when he was with the Tennessee Titans. Now, that had entirely everything to do with the fact Derrick Henry was there and Ryan Tannehill was their quarterback. But it's safe to say that Mike Vrabel probably is more of an old-school mindset when it comes to running the football, and that's essentially what he did in Tennessee. Josh McDaniels, the last Super Bowl that he won as offensive coordinator with the Patriots, they shifted late in the year to a run-heavy offense, and that was the reason they were ultimately able to make that run and win that 6th Super Bowl with Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. Not to mention Josh McDaniels with Las Vegas relied very heavily on Josh Jacobs at the running back position. Right now, Ramondre Stevenson is on the back nine of his career. We know he struggled with fumbles last year and was arguably outplayed by Antonio Gibson and Ezekiel Elliott each of the last 2 years. We know the Patriots will likely draft a running back at some point this draft. Again, it's a very deep draft, and Robert Kraft has even said, I would love to see them add a speedy running back, and we know he's an old school guy. But we know, look, the Patriots, their greatest need is the left tackle position. They have needs at receiver, but there is a glaring hole at left tackle, which is why I think a lot of Patriot fans, myself included, have kind of accepted the idea and are comfortable with the Patriots taking Will Campbell at 4th overall, understanding the arm length concerns, but he can be a serviceable left tackle in the league, and if it doesn't work out, you kick him over to left guard in year 2. But we found out a couple of days ago that Colton Miller, the starting left tackle for the Las Vegas Raiders, might be on the trade block. Now, Colton Miller, he's underpaid. He's in the final year of his contract. I think he's 29 years old at the moment. Yep, 29 years old. And he is not negotiating with the Raiders at this moment in time on a contract extension. Now, that could change, right? But there's a reason this story broke about a week out from the NFL draft. It's to put on the radar whether it's coming from Colton Miller's agent or whether it's coming from the Las Vegas Raiders themselves that, hey, we might trade this guy and get some draft compensation back. That is the way the Patriots could draft Ashton Jeanty. You trade for Colton Miller. I'm not sure I'd call him a star, but a very good NFL starting left tackle. And now you've filled all your needs. Doesn't mean you don't have minor needs. Adding another receiver, bolstering that offensive line, adding a center, maybe some depth at tight end, some depth around the edge. I think they need a free safety. We haven't seen one of those since Devin McCourty was here. They have some minor needs, but if you are able to take care of the left tackle position before the NFL draft, then you can take the best player available, which is Ashton Jeanty at 4th overall, if Abdul Carter and Travis Hunter are indeed both off the board. And Colton Miller, like I said, he's a good player. All right, according to Pro Football Focus, out of 141 tackles in the NFL, his pass blocking grade ranked 11th overall. Out of 141 tackles, his run blocking grade ranked 30th overall. So his overall grade out of the 141 tackles in the league is 14th overall. Now that includes both left tackles and right tackles, and tackles that had enough playing time that they're able to make these rankings, but they're not necessarily starting players. So there may be some players in there that are in front of him that may not be better than Colton Miller. Long story short, he is a top third, maybe even top 25% NFL starting left tackle. Compare that to having the worst starting left tackle each of the last, 2 to 3 seasons in New England. That is an enormous upgrade. And that gives the Patriots all the flexibility they need to just take the best player available at every pick during the NFL draft. And that warms up the idea of selecting Ashton Jeanty. With Mike Vrabel, his emphasis on the run, with Ramondre Stevenson kind of taking a step or two back these last couple of years. Antonio Gibson is a good player, but you don't necessarily want to rely on him as a number one. Ashton Jeanty is a workhorse back, and he is one of the more talented running backs to enter the NFL, maybe the most talented back to enter since Saquon Barkley, and that's why he is in the conversation of going somewhere in the top 10, top 5 of this draft. And if you look at Draft Buzz, like I said, this is a very deep draft at running backs. If the Patriots don't take Ashton Jeanty, and they add Colton Miller, I won't be heartbroken because there's a lot of great players to choose from. But Draft Buzz, just to give you an example, ranks the number 2 through number 10 prospects at running back somewhere between an 87 and an 83 overall grade. So all of those players, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, are all around the mid-80s in their overall ranking. Ashton Jeanty, his overall ranking, 92.5. Huge leap from the number 2 running back, which is Omario Hampton, very good player from the University of North Carolina. But Ashton Jeanty is the Saquon Barkley type difference maker that could really change the way the Patriots approach their offense and allow Josh McDaniels to get really creative. He's small, right? That's one of the issues. Now, being small at running back is not the end of the world. He has some weight to him. He's still 211 pounds, but he is 5'8". Ran a 4.42 40, which puts him at about the 90th percentile. Overall, his strengths, elite contact balance, sheds tackles with ease. He didn't necessarily have a great offensive line in front of him at Boise State. That's one of the interesting things. Like, he ran for, how many yards did he have last year? It's a ridiculous number. It's 2,600 yards rushing. Ashton Jeanty, his last year at Boise State. I mean, if you have a 1,500 yard rusher, that's often a first-round draft pick in the NFL, right? Especially if the traits carry over. 2,600 yards. He was their entire offense. So as I said, sheds tackles with ease, elite vision and anticipation, consistently finds and exploits gaps. He does have that Le'Veon Bell patience to him where he's willing to let the blockers play out in front of him before he bursts. Has a rare combination of burst and long speed, can take any touch to the house from anywhere on the field. Soft, natural hands with a wide catch radius. Workhorse capability, proven durability. So he's a third down back. I think one of the red flags is he's played so much. Like, running backs have a short shelf life. How great is he going to be, 4 or 5 years down the road? That is a big question. Advanced pass protection skills, diagnoses blitzes quickly and anchors against larger defenders. That's important for a 5'8" running back. Runs with exceptional pad level and leg drive. Game breaker who elevates his play in crucial moments. So those are the strengths, according to Draft Buzz. And there aren't a lot of weaknesses here. Slightly undersized, I just mentioned that. Could use further refinement in his route tree. I mean, he's a running back, so he'll get it down with Josh McDaniels. His usage, which I just mentioned, has had a lot of playing time, which means he might have a short shelf life in the NFL. And occasional lapses in ball security when fighting for extra yards in traffic. That's something we've certainly seen with Ramondre Stevenson. But again, this is the best running back in all likelihood to enter the NFL since Saquon Barkley, and we saw how much of an impact he had in Philadelphia last year. Again, I do not want the Patriots doing this if they haven't addressed left tackle. And because then you're looking at hoping you can trade back into the late first round and take Kelvin Banks or Josh Conerly Jr., but that's something the Patriots tried to do last year and they couldn't find any trade partners. Now, as I mentioned earlier in the podcast with the potential A.J. Brown rumor, Patriots have the 32nd overall pick, that allows them to move back into the first round. But currently, you take a running back and you don't have left tackle taken, you're looking at another year in all likelihood where you're trying to develop someone to play the position. You might have Adarian Lowe out there. You might have to shift Morgan Moses over and start Caden Wallace on the right side, or add Ozzie Trapilo in the mid-rounds and see if it works out with him. So the only way the Patriots should do this, in my opinion, is if they make this trade with Colton Miller. And you would think they're interested, right? Colton Miller, 29 years old, 6'8", 325 pounds, one of the better left tackles in the NFL, on the trade block. Doesn't sound like the Raiders want to pay him long-term. Vrabel has a good relationship, obviously, with Tom Brady. He can help make that call. I'm sure the Patriots have already inquired about this, but that would make life a lot easier. The other idea, of course, instead of taking Ashton Jeanty, and this is something I tweeted the other day, you trade for Colton Miller, and you still draft Will Campbell at 4th overall, and then you have a foundational offensive line for years to come for Drake May. Colton Miller at left tackle, Will Campbell at left guard, be the best left side in the NFL potentially, figure out center, Owenu at right guard, and then Morgan Moses at right tackle. Drake May suddenly has a top 5, top 10 offensive line, and that's another idea, right? But I think if you address left tackle, you basically filled all your major needs, and then you can take a guy like Ashton Jeanty, who would be really exciting in New England, right? Like, we haven't seen a lot of speed. We haven't seen a lot of dynamic players. You know, we had many great years, of course, with Tom Brady, but he was still a boring pocket passer. Now you're adding Ashton Jeanty, the most dynamic running back to enter the league since Saquon Barkley. You added Stephon Diggs, who looks like he's going to be ready to go week 1. His rehab videos are incredible, considering he tore his ACL 5 months ago. And then you have Drake May, who, of course, is a dual-threat quarterback. We're going to see a very different offense in New England, and I'm comfortable with Josh McDaniels being able to be a lot more creative with that. We saw the way that offense evolved with Cam Newton, the way it evolved with Jacoby Brissett when he had to make a spot start. When Brady was out and Garoppolo went down, I think Josh McDaniels could do a lot with these dynamic players, and it'll be interesting. We'll see how it ultimately plays out. But let me know in the comments below if you're watching on YouTube, are you interested in this potential A.J. Brown deal? If there is smoke there, if Fitzy's rumor is true, do you think the Patriots should make this trade, and what should they get back in compensation beyond just the 32nd overall pick and A.J. Brown? Let me know in the comments below. And also, are you a fan of Ashton Jeanty? Seen a lot of comments over the last 3 to 4 months, people saying, draft Ashton Jeanty, when I'm sitting here talking about Will Campbell or Travis Hunter, Abdul Carter. Well, this was the Ashton Jeanty podcast, and I made the case, and it involves adding Colton Miller first, but maybe you want him regardless of if the Patriots are able to make this type of trade. Let me know in the comments below. And if you're watching on YouTube, be sure to smash that like button, subscribe to this channel, hit that notification bell, or subscribe if you're listening on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Again, we'll have one more mock draft before draft day on Thursday, and we'll be there to cover it here at Pat's Cast. You're not going to want to miss it.
They're on the clock, spotlights, bright corners, their game wrecking might. But red flags flash in the draft room light. Do you gamble now or play it right? Philly calls, they're ready to deal. A star wide out, this offer's real. Pat's got May, they need appeal. Do you pass on Carter for better feel? Pat's Cast, this is the call. One pick could shift it all. Defense wins, yeah we know. But stars help your QB grow, yeah. Carter's raw, fast off the edge, but trust is shaky, that's the pledge. Meanwhile, May needs help to thrive. Give him weapons, keep hope alive. Pat's Cast, this is the call. One pick could shift it all. Defense wins, yeah we know. But stars help your QB grow, yeah. A top-tier receiver changes the game, moves the chains, elevates May's name. You still get picks, still build the D, but now the offense has identity. Yeah, it's not just bold, it's smart and clear. Build around the kid you got this year. No guarantee.